This video was sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nitsahone, and it's Monday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. In today's video, we're taking a look at another creature stat line, in particular 2-mana 3/1s. This is a stat line that's been around for a pretty long time, with the Dark's Goblin Rocksled being the very first 2-mana 3/1. However, for a really long time, it wasn't really a stat line we saw a lot of. Between 1995 and 2013, only 8 more 2-mana 3/1s were printed. However, starting with Theros block, we have seen them pretty regularly. Today, there are a total of 66 2-mana 3/1s, and 58 of them have been printed since 2014. So you can definitely expect to see some more recent cards occupying this list. As is pretty obvious, a 2-mana 3/1 is a pretty good base stat line for an aggro creature, as it can do a ton of damage for a very low cost. In this video, of the 66 2-mana 3/1s in existence, we'll take a look at the 10 that have made the biggest impact on competitive Magic. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A top 8 at a Pro Tour, Players Tour, Mythic Championship, Mythic Invitational, Legacy, or Vintage Championship is worth 2 points, and a top 8 at a Magic Fest or Grand Prix is worth 1 point. At number 10, it is Glowspor Shaman. This 2-mana 3/1 not only brings an aggressive body to the table, she also pretty aggressively mills your library. If you're interested in getting cards in your graveyard, she can do it in a hurry, and she can even make sure you won't miss a land drop if that's what you're interested in. Glowspor Shaman didn't find any success in Standard, as her ability to load up the graveyard wasn't really worth doing there. But she did find some significant success in Modern, where she was featured in some versions of the short-lived Hogak graveyard decks. The deck was obviously very interested in loading up the graveyard because of its namesake card and several other cards that were way better in the graveyard, like Bloodghast and Vengevine. It was especially good with Hogak because he wanted cards in the graveyard and creatures in play, so that casting him would be as easy as possible with Convoke and Delve. And obviously she provided 1 creature and 3 cards in the graveyard, and that was a pretty good deal. Unfortunately for Glowspor Shaman, but fortunately for pretty much everyone else, Hogak was quickly banned in the format, and the Shaman hasn't found a home in any other format since then, although her ability to load up the graveyard while also adding to the board could be sought after again at some point in the future. At number 9, it is Daring Skyjack. This 2-mana 3/1 loves attacking with some friends, because when he does, he can take to the sky, and a creature that's effectively a 2-mana 3/1 with flying can do a lot of damage in a hurry. Daring Skyjack gained all of its points in Standard, where it was played in a variety of aggro decks, including White Weenie, Boros, and Orzhov. At number 8, it is Valiant Rescuer. This is another 2-mana 3/1 with some very impressive upside. Even if it could just be cycled away, it would be kind of an okay card, since sometimes you just don't want a 2-mana 3/1, so being able to throw it away when that option isn't good is some real upside. However, it sees play because of its cycling payoff effect. It makes a 1/1 white soldier the first time you cycle every turn. Obviously, the decks that run the Rescuer can turn him into a one-man army pretty easily. Thanks to all the cards with cycling and the cycling payoffs in Ikoria, cycling decks have been pretty real in Standard. Valiant Rescuer has gained all of its points in Standard cycling decks. It's about to rotate out of Standard though, and right now at least, it doesn't have a home in any other formats. At number 7, it is Hellspark Elemental. This 2-mana 3/1 also comes with Haste and Trample, which is pretty impressive, but it's also a mini Ball Lightning, meaning it gets sacrificed at your instep. This is balanced out some by the fact that it also has Unearth, which means it can come back for another swing at some point later in the game. This means the Elemental is only 1 card, and it can do 6 damage pretty reliably, and that's a pretty good rate. It has had modest success in Standard, Extended, and Modern. In Standard, this came in mono-red aggro decks, and in Extended and Modern, its points have come in Burn. It hasn't regularly been played in Burn decks in Modern since 2014, though. At number 6, it is Skyclave Shade. This 2-mana 3/1 can't block, but it comes with all sorts of additional upside. First, you can also kick it to have it be a 5-mana 5/3, which isn't the most amazing rate, of course, but having 2 different modes in itself is powerful. What really makes the Shade good, though, is its landfall effect, which allows you to cast it from your graveyard. And you get a choice between either the regular spell or the kicked version every time, too. A 3/1 or a 5/3 that just keeps attacking and won't stay dead can be a serious problem for some decks. In Standard, it's gained points in Rakdos aggro decks, as well as Dimir Mill, where it is usually a sideboard card for mirror matchups. If you can turn cards that your opponent mills into creatures, they're going to have a problem on their hands. It's also gained points in mono-black aggro decks in Historic and Pioneer. It's likely to gain more points, especially given the fact that it already has success outside of Standard. At number 5, it is Glorybound Initiate. This 2-mana 3/1 comes with a pretty powerful Exert option. If you choose to have it not untapped during your next untap step when it attacks, it becomes a 4/4 with lifelink. That's the kind of size that is downright scary in the early game, and it's also enough for it to be relevant all game long. In Standard, it was played in a variety of different aggro decks, including Boros aggro, Esper vehicles, and Blue-White Flash. It also has a single point in Modern that came in a Blue-White control deck where it was one of the deck's potential win conditions. It hasn't gained any points since 2018 though. It is legal and historic, so maybe it gains some points there in the future. At number 4, it is Blacklance Paragon. This 2-mana 3/1 has Flash and the ability to grant a knight both Death Touch and Lifelink. One really nice thing about this card is that it counts itself, so even on an empty board it can flash in and kill anything thanks to Death Touch, while also gaining you 3 life. That's a pretty good deal for 2 mana, and that's kind of the fail case. Obviously, the ability gets better the more knights you have around. It's gained all of its points in Standard, including in Rakdos aggro decks that have a knight sub-theme, as well as the more knight-focused Mardu aggro decks. The Paragon is going to rotate out of Standard soon, and it currently doesn't have a home in any other formats. At number 3, it is Rimrock Knight. This 2-mana 3/1 comes with an adventure, which gives you the option of casting the knight as the combat trick Boulder Rush, and if you send him on that adventure, you can also cast Rimrock Knight as a creature later. The little knight is great for aggressive decks because the trick lets you get in for more damage before the hard-hitting 2-mana 3/1 enters the battlefield itself. It can't block, but aggro decks don't really believe in that anyway. Rimrock Knight has gained points in both Standard and Pioneer, and unsurprisingly, all of them have come in aggro decks, primarily mono-red aggro decks, but the Knight has also gained points in Gruul Adventures, which have various ways to get extra value out of creatures with Adventure, and Mardu Knights, which can get some extra value out of its creature type. Like a lot of cards on this list, it's about to rotate out of Standard, but it probably has a decent shot at gaining more points in formats like Historic and Pioneer. At number 2, it is Spirit of the Labyrinth. This 2-mana 3/1 is usually called a hate bear despite not actually being a 2-mana 2/2. This is because it still follows the general idea of hate bear creatures. They are reasonable bodies to add to the board that also provide some sort of hate or disruption. In this case, the Spirit makes it so players can only draw 1 card a turn. Playing this on turn 2 and beating your opponent down while also limiting the number of cards your opponent draws is pretty nice. However, it wasn't really an effect that was worth it in Block Standard or Modern. That's okay though, because it has made a home for itself in Magic's Eternal formats, where there are a whole lot of decks that like drawing lots of cards. In Legacy, its primary home is Death and Taxes, an aggro deck that disrupts the opponents with hate bears like the Spirit, and in Vintage, it's been played mostly in Eldrazi aggro decks, which actually have a similar strategy, only instead of playing small creatures that disrupt the opponent, the deck mostly plays larger Eldrazi who do the same thing. Spirit of the Labyrinth is continuing to gain points in both Legacy and Vintage, and it is pretty likely to pass the number 1 card on this list within the next couple of years or so. But for right now, the number 1 card on this list is Veteran Motorist, another 2-mana 3/1 that does a whole lot for the investment. This 2-mana 3/1 comes with a Scry Enter the Battlefield trigger, which is nice, and it also really likes to crew vehicles, since when it does, it gives them +1/+1. Kaladesh Standard was loaded up with powerful vehicles, so the Motorist's ability came up a lot, and because it's a 3/1, it could crew most of the vehicles quite easily, in addition to the fact that it pumped them up at the same time. The Motorist was mostly played in vehicle aggro decks while in Standard. However, while Veteran Motorist might occupy the number 1 spot on this list right now, the fact that it doesn't have a single point since 2017 probably means its position is in jeopardy. Now, because of Kaladesh Remastered, the Motorist is in Historic, but we are probably a ways away from there being a vehicle deck in that format. Still, it isn't completely impossible that it happens at some point in the next few years. Well, that does it for this MTG Top 10. If you want to own any of these 2-mana 3/1s, you should check out the description where I've included a direct link to each of these cards in the Card Kingdom store. You can also find a link for the shirt I was wearing at the beginning of this video. Also, do me a favor and like and share this video, as that will make it more likely that other people will see it too. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, and if you want to catch up on old ones, including several others on creature stat lines, you should see some playlists shortly. Thanks for watching.